I didn't expect the applause. In the sterile, air-conditioned vastness of the Vancouver Convention Center, I had anticipated many things. Technical glitches, polite nods, perhaps a few skeptical glances from the old guard of the industry. But I didn't plan for the standing ovation. I just stood there at the podium, my hands resting lightly on the cool wood, looking out at 300 faces illuminated by the soft glow of laptop screens and stage lights. In that moment, a profound realization washed over me, a physical sensation like a sudden drop in temperature. After 15 years of silence, after 15 years of burying my voice beneath layers of code, spreadsheets, and boardroom negotiations, I was finally about to speak. My name is Claire Ashford. I am 35 years old, and tonight, I am the keynote speaker at the Western Canada Tech Innovation Summit. To the industry, I am a titan, a partner at a top-tier venture capital firm, a woman who spots the future before it happens. But to my father, David Ashford, sitting in the third row with his jaw clenched and his face a ghostly shade of pale, I am still just the daughter who wasted her potential. To understand the fire in my lungs tonight, you have to understand the ashes I rose from. I grew up in Richmond, British Columbia. It is a place of salmon canneries and foggy marshes. But for me, it was a place of intellectual awakening. My mother, Jennifer, was a software engineer at Electronic Arts long before the world thought twice about women in tech. She was brilliant, fierce, and possessed an analytical mind that could deconstruct a complex algorithm as easily as a grocery list. She was also dying. By the time I turned 12, ovarian cancer was hollowed out her body, though it never touched her spirit. Before she passed, she did the only thing she could to ensure my future. She set up an education fund, $50,000 a fortune earned through her own sweat and genius. She made my father promise no. She made him swear upon the love they once shared that it would be used strictly for my education. He nodded. He held her hand, his eyes damp with performative grief. He lied. 2 years after the soil settled over Mom's grave, the house changed. The scent of Mom's lavender was replaced by the cloying, expensive perfume of Patricia Chen, a real estate agent with a predatory smile and a son my age named Marcus. Marcus was the antithesis of everything I was. He was confident, loud, athletic, and utterly mediocre. I was the difficult child. I was quiet. I read books on quantum physics for fun. I spent my weekends in our drafty garage, building computers from salvaged parts and soldering motherboards until my fingers were scorched. I got straight A's without trying, a feat that should have earned me pride but instead earned me resentment. "No one likes a know-it-all, Claire," Dad would say at the dinner table. The air would grow thick as he praised Marcus for a C+ in biology, treating a passing grade like a Nobel Prize while my perfect report card sat ignored under a stack of Patricia's real estate brochures. The breaking point arrived when I was 17. I had been accepted into the University of British Columbia's computer science program, one of the best in the country. I had secured a partial scholarship, but I still needed $15,000 from Mom's fund to cover the remaining tuition and housing. I remember the evening vividly. The rain was drumming against the windows of our Richmond home. I sat Dad down and asked for the money. He said no. He didn't even have the courage to look me in the eye. He just stared at a crack in the dining table. "Marcus needs that money for his MBA, he said, his voice flat. "He's going to business school at Simon Fraser. That's a real investment. That's a career with a future." But Mom left that money for me, my voice cracked, the betrayal stinging more than the financial loss. "Your mother would want the money used wisely," Patricia interrupted, her smile as sharp as a razor blade. "Marcus has real potential, Claire. He has charisma. You're just... well, you're smart. But what are you going to do with it? Marry a programmer? Sit in a basement and type until your eyes go bad?" I stared at my father. I waited for a spark of memory, a flicker of the promise he made to a dying woman. I waited for him to say anything in my defense. He just looked at his plate and asked for the salt. That was the night Claire Ashford, the daughter, died. In her place, a machine was born. I worked. I got a job at Best Buy, hauling televisions and explaining routers to people who didn't care. I applied for every obscure scholarship in the province. I moved into a damp, cramped basement suite in Burnaby where the walls smelled of mildew and the heater only worked on Tuesdays. I ate ramen for 2 years straight, not as a culinary choice, but as a survival tactic. I put myself through UBC. I graduated with honors, my name called out to an empty auditorium seat where my father should have been. He didn't come to the ceremony, but 3 weeks later, he threw a lavish garden party for Marcus, who had scraped through his MBA with the help of my mother's money. After graduation, I didn't look for the safe corporate jobs Patricia thought I belonged in. I joined a 5-person startup called Cascade Technologies. We were crammed into a converted warehouse, working on supply chain optimization software. I worked 80-hour weeks. When the sun went down, I didn't go home. I stayed at my desk, teaching myself machine learning from textbooks I bought secondhand. I was the lead developer within 3 years. I wasn't just writing code, I was building the architecture of the future. By the time I was 28, the world noticed. Cascade was acquired by Microsoft for $42 million. My equity stake, which I had negotiated with a ferocity that would have terrified my teenage self, was worth $3.2 million. I didn't tell my father. I didn't tell him when I bought my first apartment in Cole Harbor, nor when I moved my mother's jewelry out of the safety deposit box he'd forgotten about. At 29, I transitioned into the world of finance, joining Apex Ventures as an associate. I spoke the language of both code and capital. At 32, I made partner. At 34, I led a Series A investment in a quantum computing startup called North Star Quantum. I saw the unicorn in them before they had a horn. Today, they are valued at $1.2 billion, Canada's first quantum unicorn. And through all of it, I kept the secret. To my father, I was still just a girl with some office job doing computer stuff. Our biannual phone calls, birthdays, and Christmas were exercises in endurance. They lasted 4 minutes and felt like unanesthetized dental surgery. 3 months ago, the silence was broken by a phone call from Patricia. "Claire, darling," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of false warmth that makes your skin crawl. "Your father and I are celebrating our 21st wedding anniversary. We're having a big party at the Fairmont Hotel. It would mean so much if you came. Family is everything, after all." Every instinct told me to hang up. But a small, wounded part of me, the 17-year-old girl still standing in that rain-slicked kitchen, wanted to see the look on his face. I said yes. "Great," Patricia chirped. "Oh, and Claire? Wear something nice. We're inviting some very important people. You don't want to look. Well, you know, the party was tonight." I didn't just wear something nice. I arrived in my Audi e-tron, the silent hum of the electric engine echoing the quiet power I now possessed. I wore a Stella McCartney suit, charcoal gray, sharp enough to cut glass, tailored to a degree that cost more than Marcus's first car. My heels were Manolo Blahnik, my watch a vintage Cartier. I looked every inch the woman who could buy and sell the Fairmont Ballroom if I felt like it. The room was a sea of Dad's golf buddies and Patricia's high-end real estate clients. When Dad saw me walk in, his eyes didn't fill with warmth. They flicked over my suit and my stride with a frown. "Claire," he said, skipping the hug. "You came." I said I would. Patricia swooped in, her jewelry clinking like a warning. "Oh, honey, you look so corporate. Are you still doing that computer thing? In the cubicle?" "Something like that," I said, my voice a calm lake. Marcus appeared, a scotch in one hand and a smirk on his face. He looked soft, his expensive suit unable to hide the fact that he'd never worked an 80-hour week in his life. "Hey sis, still coding away? Need me to check your 401k? I just smiled. Something like that. Dinner was a slow-motion car crash. I was relegated to a table in the back, sandwiched between second cousins who smelled of mothballs and didn't know my last name. At the head table, Dad and Patricia held court, basking in the reflected glow of their successful friends. Then came the speeches. Patricia gushed about Dad's unwavering support. Marcus stood up and praised Dad for always believing in me and investing in my future. He looked right at me when he said the word investing. Finally, Dad stood up to thank the room. His eyes eventually landed on me, and I saw the opportunity for a joke spark in his mind. And I want to acknowledge my daughter, Claire, who managed to make it tonight despite her busy schedule. He chuckled, and a few people joined in. Claire works in tech. She never went to grad school, never got married, never gave me grandkids. But hey, she's got a job, right? In this economy, that's something. The room chuckled nervously. My second cousin whispered, "What a jerk." But Dad wasn't done. Emboldened by the reaction, he leaned into the microphone. "I always told Claire, women in tech are a dime a dozen. You need to find a good husband, settle down. But she's stubborn, always has been. Guess she'll figure it out eventually when the coding runs out." Then, Patricia leaned over and whispered in his ear. Dad nodded, grinning like he was about to deliver a prize. "Actually," Dad said, "I have a surprise. Since Claire seems a bit lost, I've invited someone. Douglas Finch, stand up." A man in his 40s stood up at a front table. He looked like a nice enough man, but he was clearly mortified. Douglas is a very successful orthodontist, single, great guy. Douglas, meet Claire. Claire, maybe you two could chat? He could teach you a thing or two about a real career. The room went deathly silent. Douglas looked like he wanted to dissolve into the carpet. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the sting of his words anymore, because suddenly, I realized they couldn't reach me. I stood up, smoothed the front of my $2,800 jacket, and walked directly to the microphone. Dad stepped aside, looking confused as I took the stand. "Thank you, Dad, for that vivid introduction," I said, my voice amplified and steady. "And thank you, Douglas. I'm flattered, but I'm actually engaged. My fiancé is Dr. Ethan Cole. He's the Chief Innovation Officer at Lululemon. We're getting married in May." I reached into my purse, pulled out the 3-carat diamond ring I'd chosen to leave off earlier, and slid it onto my finger. The ballroom let out a collective gasp. Dad's smile didn't just fade, it vanished. "But more importantly," I continued, "I want to address the potential you mentioned. You're right, Dad. I never went to grad school. I didn't need to. I was too busy being hired by Cascade Technologies, becoming lead developer, and walking away with $3.2 million when Microsoft acquired us before I hit 30. Total silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the Fairmont's marble floors. I then joined Apex Ventures. I am now a senior partner. Last year, I led the $50 million investment in North Star Quantum. You might have seen them on the news. They're Canada's first tech unicorn, valued at $1.2 billion. I turned my gaze to Marcus. His scotch glass was tilting precariously in his hand. "And Marcus, remember that real investment Dad made in your MBA? The one funded by my mother's education money? How's your company doing? The one that's been pre-revenue for 3 years?" Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "That's what I thought," I said. "I heard you've been struggling. 3 failed startups in 5 years. It's a tough market for people who rely on other people's money instead of their own talent." I turned back to my father. His face was a mask of shock and dawning horror. "Here's the thing, Dad. I spent 15 years trying to prove to you that I was worth something. I thought if I reached the top of the mountain, you'd finally see me, but tonight, I realize I don't need your approval. I never did. I became successful despite you, not because of you. And honestly, that's the best gift you ever gave me. You taught me that the only person who needs to believe in me is me." I set the microphone down. The thud echoed through the speakers. I walked toward the exit, my heels clicking rhythmically against the floor. As I reached the heavy oak doors, a single person started clapping, then another. By the time I hit the lobby, the entire room had erupted. The next morning, my phone was a war zone. 17 text messages. 3 from Dad. "We need to talk. Claire, you embarrassed me. Call me immediately." 5 from Marcus. "That was harsh. Dad's really upset. Can you at least apologize?" 2 from Patricia. "How dare you? You ruined our anniversary." and 7 from people I barely knew at the party cousins, business associates of my father. That was amazing. You're my hero. Can I buy you coffee? I deleted my father's messages. I blocked Marcus. I sent one reply to Patricia. No, Patricia. Dad ruined my childhood. I just told the truth. Then, an unknown number called. It was Douglas, the orthodontist. Hi, Claire. This is Douglas Finch. I just wanted to apologize for last night. I had no idea your dad was going to ambush you. He told me you were single, struggling, and could use a successful male role model. I'm so sorry. I actually laughed. Thank you, Douglas. That means a lot. For what it's worth, he said. That speech was incredible. My dad was a lot like yours. I get it. We talked for 20 minutes. He was a kind man, a victim of my father's manipulation just as much as I was. He asked me to coffee, and I told him the truth that I was engaged. He laughed. Smart move, making up a fiancé to get out of that. I didn't, I said. Ethan is very real. We've been together for 2 years. I just didn't wear the ring because I didn't want my dad to think he had any say in my happiness. Douglas went quiet for a moment. That's really sad, Claire. Yeah, I whispered. It is. 2 weeks later, my assistant's voice came over the intercom. There's a David Ashford here to see you. He says he's your father. My heart hammered against my ribs. I almost told her to send him away. But I looked out at the view from my corner office, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Vancouver Harbor, the float planes taking off against the North Shore Mountains, and I realized he couldn't hurt me here. This was my kingdom. Send him in, I said. He looked older than he had at the party. He looked tired. He sat across from my desk and stared at the view for a long time without saying a word. This is really your office? He finally asked. Yes. I didn't know, he said, his voice cracking. I didn't know you were this successful. You didn't ask, Dad. For 15 years, you never once asked what I was building. He flinched. I thought you were just getting by. I thought you were a clerk or something. I was thriving. You just never bothered to notice because I wasn't Marcus. His hands shook as he rested them on his knees. I'm sorry, he whispered. I waited. I didn't offer a platitude. I didn't tell him it was okay. I'm sorry I took your mother's money. I'm sorry I didn't come to your graduation. I'm sorry I introduced you like that. I'm so sorry, Claire. I looked at him, this man who had raised me, who had been my entire world once, and then became the villain of my story, and I felt a vast, quiet emptiness. No anger, no heat, just the realization that the bridge had burned so long ago that there wasn't even ash left to walk on. Thank you for apologizing, I said, but I don't think we can fix this. His eyes filled with tears. I know I can't. But can you at least tell me, when did you stop trying? When did you give up on me? I didn't have to think about it. When I was 17, when you took Mom's money and gave it to Marcus, that was the moment I realized you would never choose me. So I chose myself. He covered his face with his hands and wept silently. We sat there for a long time until he finally stood up. I'm proud of you, Claire, he said. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I am. You're right, I said gently. It doesn't mean anything now. He nodded, walked out of the glass doors, and out of my life. Life has a funny way of coming full circle. Last month, Marcus called me. Not to apologize, but because his latest startup, a glorified delivery app, was folding. He needed $200,000 to keep it afloat. Claire, I know we haven't been close, he stammered, but I'm in a bind. You've got the money. It's nothing to you. Can you help your brother out? I leaned back in my chair and let out a short, dry laugh. Marcus, do you remember what Dad said to me when I asked for my mother's education fund? He said, your mother would want the money used wisely. So let me ask you, is your failing startup a wise investment? The silence on the other end was deafening. I didn't think so, I said. Good luck. I hung up. His company folded 3 weeks later. He's currently working in real estate for his mother. Which brings me back to tonight. Back to the podium in Vancouver. I've learned a lot of things in the 35 years I've been on this earth. I've learned how to code in 6 languages, how to value a company, and how to survive on 50 cents a day. But the most important lesson I've learned is this. Your worth is not determined by who believes in you. It is determined by what you believe about yourself. I spent a decade chasing a shadow. I thought my success would be a shield, or a bridge, or a weapon. But the truth is, I was always enough. My father's inability to see my value wasn't a reflection of my lack, it was a reflection of his blindness. If you are reading this, or if you are sitting in this audience tonight, and you have a parent who told you that you weren't good enough, if you have someone who compared you to a sibling, who stole your dreams, or who made you feel small, listen to me. You don't owe them your success. You don't owe them your forgiveness. You don't owe them a seat at your table. Build your life. Become exactly who you were meant to be. Surround yourself with people who see your fire and help it grow. And if the people who were supposed to love you can't celebrate your wins, that is their failure, not yours. I'm getting married in 3 months. Ethan and I are buying a house in Kitsilano with a garden for the children we hope to have. I'm launching a new venture fund specifically focused on women-led startups, ensuring no other 17-year-old girl has to beg for her own mother's legacy. My father won't be at the wedding. Marcus won't be invited. Patricia can watch the photos on Facebook if she likes. Because here is the final lesson. Closure isn't a tearful apology or a cinematic reunion. Closure is realizing you don't need one. I don't need my father to say he's proud. I don't need Marcus to respect me. I have my own respect. And that is more than enough. So if you're waiting for permission to start your life, stop. Start now. Build something undeniable. And when they finally notice, smile, nod, and keep walking. By then, you'll be so far ahead, their opinion won't even be audible over the sound of your own success. Trust me, I know.